It's not time to panic. Everything is still fine. At least that's what all the economists are trying to make you believe right now, after we just got yet another horrible jobs report, which is kind of funny considering the person responsible for the last horrible jobs report was fired, and now we're still getting another horrible jobs report. So what's going on here? In August of 2025, employers only added 22,000 jobs, which was far fewer than expected, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the unemployment rate also ticked up to 4.3%. And by the way, this is before any of the revisions come in, right? We created 22,000 jobs before the revision comes, because whenever the revision comes, it's probably going to be negative, because that's what always happens. It always gets revised down. It hardly ever gets revised up, which I would be surprised if it does. It does happen from time to time, but not very often. I mean, just look at this chart here, guys. The change in monthly non-farm payroll going back to January of 2021 up until now, it is almost like we have completely stopped creating jobs altogether. That's how bad this is. This has now been 4 months in a row of significantly lower job growth, and all you kept hearing from the Fed is that, oh, the economy's great, the job market is still strong. That's all we keep hearing from economists and government officials. Everybody keeps repeating the same nonsense about how everything is fine, but it looks like we are far from fine. I mean, we're talking slowdowns in hiring and everything across the board, from manufacturing to construction to professional and business services, government jobs. Pretty much the only jobs that are being created are in healthcare and in hospitality still. That's about it. At this point, the job market is at a complete standstill and is showing no signs of improving anytime soon. And that's why the Trump administration has been screaming at Jerome Powell and the Fed to lower interest rates. But the funny thing is, even if they do that, even if it does create more jobs, which I'm kind of highly skeptical about, because also a lot of the jobs that we've been losing have been due to the rise of AI. So employers have no incentive to bring those jobs back, regardless of how low interest rates are. You could have interest rates at 0, and it's not going to bring back jobs that have been taken away by AI. And today I'm walking along Corte Madera Creek here in Larkspur, California. But yet people also still claim that we are not in a recession, guys. Like, who cares what the official call is? Who cares if we are officially in a recession or not when you see numbers like this? Because the reality is, we haven't seen jobs numbers this bad since during the Great Recession. And on Friday, when the new jobs data came out, there was also a revision for June, a downward revision, by the way, that showed a loss of 13,000 jobs that month. Overall, up to date with the most latest revisions, employers have only added 88,000 jobs in the past 3 months, which is roughly 1/3 of the same time period of last year. Now, the Trump administration is saying, whatever, this is not a big deal, because once the tariffs start bringing more jobs back to America, now that we've gotten rid of so many illegal workers, it'll open up more opportunities for American workers. So we'll see if that's going to happen, especially now that the tariffs have been ruled unconstitutional. I'm not feeling too optimistic about that, but we'll see. Here's a quote from Trump. He says, "The real numbers that I'm talking about will be in a year from now, when new factories begin opening. You'll see job numbers that are going to be absolutely incredible, like our country has never seen." Well, I'll tell you what, I'll believe it when I see it. That's all I got to say about it. But yet the Trump administration is still putting a tremendous amount of pressure on Jerome Powell and the Fed to lower interest rates, as if this is just going to solve all the problems of our economy right now. But apparently, everybody's having some severe short-term memory loss and not remembering that it's really low interest rates that got us into this mess to begin with. And to make matters worse, opportunities for people who are looking for a job right now have become increasingly scarce. For the first time in a while, you have now more people looking for a job than the amount of job openings that are available, which is a huge problem for obvious reasons. And with the unemployment rate ticking up at a time when there's fewer jobs available than there have been in a while, this is not going in the right direction. Now, hopefully Trump is right, because if in a year from now, there's all these new jobs that come back to America and there's less immigrants to come and take these jobs from Americans, that can be a very positive situation. And that's the perfect example of having to go through pain now in order to have some gain later on, right? Got to have the pain to get the gain. So let's go through some economic hardship for about a year. And then once this whole grand plan works out, then everything's supposed to get better. But like I said, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it's not going to work. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying with the way things are looking right now, it's not looking too likely to work. Manufacturing activity has also contracted for 6 months in a row in 2025. And Americans are now spending less on dining out. They're spending less on hotels and other non-essential nice-to-haves. And economists are worrying about the rising unemployment rate because that could cause families to pull back on spending even further, putting a larger strain on the economy. Like, well, yeah, what do you expect people to do? Do you want everybody to go out there and continue racking up the debt just so you can keep your precious economy going? It's like everything else comes at the expense of the economy, guys. Like, have kids, go broke, no problem, as long as we have an economy. Go into debt that you're never going to be able to get out of, keep spending even if you don't have a job or you can't afford the cost of living, no problem, as long as we got the economy. Like, it is just pathetic, to be honest. Like, I am all for making money and doing well in this country, but not at the expense of everybody spending more than they can really afford to just to keep up with the Joneses and literally have nothing in the end. Of course, if you have a college degree, it's actually even worse right now because the unemployment rate for recent college graduates rose to 9.3% in August, which is up from 5.4% in January. So just since the start of this year, the job market has gotten twice as bad for you if you're a recent college graduate. And a lot of young people today are saying, look, I feel like I've been lied to by everybody that told me I needed to go to college in order to get a good job and be competitive in the workforce. Like, I kind of felt like that was a lie 20 years ago when I heard that nonsense when I was still in high school. But the fact that kids today still believe it and are still being brainwashed with that same stuff is only hurting people at this point. I'm not saying college doesn't have a place, because obviously there are some careers and fields where you have to have a degree and there's no other way around it. But if you just want to make a good living and make money, you don't have to go to college, guys. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but that is just not essential. It never has been, and it never will be. In fact, it's less essential now than ever, I would say. So now the futures market is predicting that the Fed is going to cut rates at its next 3 meetings in September, October, and in December, all due to this bad news on the job market. So they're basically saying that the Fed is going to ditch their effort to fight inflation, which was always fake to begin with, so I guess it doesn't really matter. And now they're going to focus on re-stimulating the economy. I mean, literally, we are seeing the job market in the United States collapse right before our eyes. Like, there really is no job market right now, unless you have some sort of specialty skills or you just want to work for a restaurant or a hotel or in the healthcare industry. The job market is non-existent. And now that these tariffs have been ruled unconstitutional and there's a strong chance that we might not have the tariffs pretty soon, it's creating even more uncertainty than there was before. And any company who was maybe thinking about bringing some manufacturing back to the US might have to just remain doing what they're doing and not do that, because it might make no sense if we're not able to keep these tariffs. I just can't wait to see when all this bad news is actually going to become bad news for the stock market, because the stock market indexes did take a small dip from this bad economic news, but it always seems to bounce back. It seems like it doesn't really matter how bad the economic news is these days. It always just comes back. Now, I don't know if the Fed has been lying to us all along, or they're just that dense and have no clue what's going on in the actual economy, but the Fed thought that the labor market was on solid footing, okay? They've been thinking that for a while. At the end of July, Jerome Powell said the labor market's solid when we have historically low unemployment. Now, just a month later, things aren't looking so solid anymore. Now, the Fed can use in their defense and say, well, we were kind of blinded by the data in July because only a few days after their vote to keep interest rates steady, the July jobs report came out and showed that the labor market was far weaker than previously understood. So they can kind of use that as an excuse of why they didn't cut interest rates at the last meeting in July. But me personally, this is my opinion, I still think that the Fed needs to be raising interest rates. As bad as all this other stuff looks, it's going to be the only way to truly ever get the economy back on track, guys. Lowering interest rates and having low interest rates for artificial reasons just like this is what got us into this mess, and it's just going to make the mess bigger, even if it kind of looks like it's helping temporarily. That's how these cycles have been going ever since we had the GFC in 2008. This has been the same playbook, and look how bad things have gotten since then. Nobody wants to do the honorable or the right thing and actually raise interest rates and make borrowing prohibitively expensive so people stop taking on debt, companies stop taking on debt, and all the companies that cannot survive without debt die off. Which means, yes, we're going to see much higher unemployment and even more job losses, and things will get worse for a while until the real economy resurfaces and the jobs that we actually need and the businesses that people actually want can turn a profit and start creating the new economy out of the ashes. And then we will have the strongest economy that we've had probably for over 100 years now, since even before the Great Depression, once everything is based on reality and what people actually want and are willing to spend their money on, not just on debt and interest rates. I'm telling you guys, if you want a job, go look for a job at a hotel or a restaurant, because 28,000 hotel and restaurant jobs were created in August. It's not what you want to hear, but that's the reality. And even if lowering interest rates does create better and more high-paying jobs and kind of brings the job market back, it's not really going to matter, because you're going to need all that extra money to pay for the exorbitant cost of living that we're all going to be facing once runaway inflation takes place. Because we're already sitting at a 3% inflation rate under the official numbers, which you know is going to be double or triple that in the real world. And then once they start lowering interest rates, that's just going to continue to climb. And just to put into perspective, the job losses in 2025 have been so bad already that it's already surpassed all the job losses that we've seen. As of the end of August of 2025, there have been 892,000 job cuts, and that's 66% more than a year earlier and above the total for all of 2024. And right here in California, the tech industry has been hit particularly hard due to the advancement of AI. Now, the biggest job losses have actually been government jobs due to the Doge department. But after all the government job losses, you know which state lost the most jobs? Right here in California. The only place that saw more job losses was Washington, D.C., which doesn't really count because it's not a state, and those were mostly all the government job losses. But the technology industry here in California, followed by the services, media, and even the retail industry, are really being hit hard. California's job cuts this year increased 24% to 135,241 jobs lost, and that's the official number. Who knows what the real number really is? Percentage-wise, New York actually lost more jobs at 33% more job losses this year so far than last year. But states like Texas and Nevada are actually gaining jobs. Also here in California, you have pharmaceutical companies, financial firms, nonprofits, and retailers all seeing huge increases in the amount of job cuts. Retailers say they're being hit hard by tariffs and inflation and the ongoing economic uncertainty. And if this trend continues, the retailers are all saying that this is going to be a very weak holiday shopping season, and we're going to see much fewer seasonal hires and probably even layoffs, because typically what you see happen is during the holidays, retailers will hire on seasonal people for extra help, because the holidays is always the busiest time of the year. And you know, somehow, even though this is still a really bad economy, I'm still pretty confident that it's still going to be a lot of money being spent on all these gifts, everything else during the holidays that people really can't afford, because at this point, it's just tradition in America. You buy this stuff whether you can afford it or not. We see it every single year, no matter how bad things get. And I think this year is going to be no different. According to Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, they say that employers plan to add about 1,494 new jobs in August, which is the lowest level since 2009 when the firms first started monitoring those numbers. And it's estimated that AI has already been responsible for over 20,000 of the job losses that we've seen so far in 2025. And the timing for this couldn't probably be worse, right? With the advent of AI and the AI programs taking everybody's jobs at the same time that the economy is already not great, at the same time when the cost of living already exceeds what most people can earn at a job, timing is not very good. It's great for the companies who are earning record profits on these AI productivity models, but not great for the average Joe who's trying to survive. And you know, for a while, I've had so many people try to tell me that, oh, Michael, you are just always negative. Everything is doom and gloom with you. Everything is fine. Well, that's easy to say if you're rich and you don't have any financial worries. But that is not the case for the vast majority of Americans right now. Some of it's their fault because people are irresponsible with money, but some of it is just because of bad luck and a bad economy. And of course, I would like to see things turn around and see things get better, but it seems like every month things continue to get worse when it comes to the job reports, when it comes to inflation, and we're really going to be paying attention to this very heavily after the Fed cuts interest rates later this month if they decide to do that, because that's going to exacerbate the issue, and it's going to be the number one thing that everybody's going to have to worry about essentially is inflation. I think the government and the Fed have created such a large mess that there's literally no way through this other than to just make things worse, which temporarily make things look good until it gets even worse. That seems to be the game plan. So hang in there, guys. I'll be here to report on the latest and let you know what's going on and give you any insider tips I can that I think might help along the way. But for now, all we can really do is just sit back and watch what happens next. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.